Hello gang, and welcome back. Tattooed Biker here with you. And tonight I have something truly spine-chilling lined up for you. I'll be reading into real encounters and sightings with upright cryptid canines, dogmen, or some would even say werewolves, sent in by you, my brave viewers. The last one in particular was quite disturbing and even has a follow-up email from the submitter. You don't want to miss this one. So grab your silver bullets and let's ride to Dogman country. Number 1. Dear Biker, this is something that happened to my husband, then boyfriend, and me about 20 years ago. We'd gone to watch a friend's band play and were headed home from downtown Dallas. It was around 1 a.m., but we still wanted to hang out before I was expected home, so we headed to his apartment on one of the South Dallas suburbs. This is a well-populated suburb, but by the time we got close to his apartment, the roads were pretty much empty. We exited the highway and turned onto the street that led to his place, but as soon as we passed the traffic light under the highway, we both saw it, plain as day. Stone sober and wide awake, we both saw a werewolf-type creature exit a neighborhood street and calmly run, in only about 4 steps, across a 4-lane road. It was about 75 yards in front of us. But it wasn't exactly the way that I would imagine a werewolf. It was completely canine, with no human features at all except for the fact that it was on 2 legs. Now these legs were massive and the thing was about 7 feet tall, but the arms were tiny. They actually reminded me of T-Rex arms. They were small and hung like dog's legs. They seemed useless if the thing was trying to attack something. The head was also odd. Besides being a typical dog color, grayish-black, the eyes were bright and glowing yellow, even when there weren't headlights shining directly in them. It didn't look like the glow that an animal gets from the lights in their eyes. But the thing that stood out to me the most was that the eyes were binocular, like a fish. I saw the eyes clearly, even though he was completely profile to us. I had tried drawing it, but I just couldn't get it right. It was a little more menacing in the head and the face than I could convey, but I couldn't figure out how to draw it without making it look over the top and cartoonish. The road that we were driving on had heavy trees to the right-hand side. When it came out, it was running, but crossed this road in just a few steps. It was big enough and effortlessly fast enough to know that a human couldn't have dressed up and done this. There was an open field that he ran into. When my husband and I got to where the trees broke, we both turned our heads to look, but it was long gone by then, about 4 seconds. More about what this thing looked like. It was very menacing, but to be honest, much less scary than what I would imagine a werewolf to be. When it was running across the road, I didn't get the sense that it cared that we saw it, or that it was even trying that hard to cross before we got closer. I didn't feel fear as if we were threatened, only disbelief really. And again, it's not like we were in a rural area by any stretch of the imagination. When we passed the tree line, his apartment complex was literally maybe 150 yards or so up the road. We hurried in and didn't exactly relax. We just basically sat there in silence, trying to rationalize it, I guess. Still to this day, I often think to myself, did this really happen? But as soon as I close my eyes and think about it, those bright, glowing yellow eyes are still there. Signed, Tina. Number 2. Hey Biker, I listened to you on Steve Stockton's radio show, Everything Out There, a few months ago, and I wanted to share a crazy experience I had about 7 years ago. It was close to 11 p.m. on a brightly lit night. I was in an area outside of Atlanta, Georgia, where there were a lot of hills, horse stables, and large, wealthy homes. I'd been dropped off in the vast parking lot of a large condominium complex. My ride had some other plans, and I had asked to be dropped off at the condos where a friend of mine lives. Once dropped off, I buzzed my friend, but she wasn't home. So I tried using my phone, but the reception was always spotty in this area. I walked here and there in the parking lot, trying to find a signal, still nothing. I noticed through the trees how bright and full that the moon shone. Frustrated, I tried to sit for a minute and smoke a cigarette on the steps of the entrance to the condo complex. After a few minutes, I saw something huge and white to my right. It was about 10 feet away from me. It looked like a beautiful and exotic white German shepherd, only much taller with long legs and a tall body. I jumped up thinking, I better find the owner before it gets hit. I walked closer to the animal as it stared right at me. As I got closer, I quickly realized that this definitely was no dog. As I was about 6 feet away from it, a chill went up and down my spine, and I saw very clearly this animal was huge and wolf-like, but had white fur throughout its body. I had never seen such an exotic animal like that. Then the animal suddenly gave me a weird smile, which I believed was not a good sign from a wild animal. It usually means aggression. Suddenly and silently, it stood up onto its hind legs and ran about 10 yards before diving into the bushes. And for the next 10 minutes or so, every horse in their stables throughout those hills made the most alarming sounds, as this animal must have run amongst the hills where those stables are. You could figure out the direction it was traveling by the reactions of the horses freaking out. Incredibly, later that night I ran into it again when I started to walk home. I turned a corner and met it head on. It was standing this time. It smiled again before dropping down onto all fours and lunging into the street and taking off like a rocket up a grassy hill. The long grass parted as it ran through it. The whole experience was very spooky and surreal. Thanks for letting me share. Signed, Lisa. Number 3. Dear TB, I saw something in the road that has changed me forever. I want to know if anyone else has experienced something similar or knows what I saw. It was December 2022, and I was Christmas shopping with a friend of mine. I live in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. It took up most of the day, so we had quite the load. It was dark by the time we finished, so we figured not much else to do, so we might as well just power through wrapping everything. By the time we finished, it was a bit after 1 a.m., and we were out of cigarettes, so we left my place to go to a gas station. I had done all the driving during our shopping because, well, she doesn't handle busy traffic very well, so she offered to drive. Bit of a night owl, so late night drives weren't out of the ordinary, and the road I live on is a long one. It's not isolated. We're in a rural area, but there are wooded areas and a train track close to my place. The neighborhood has quite a lot of apartment buildings and houses. The point is that I take a busy road daily, especially at night. So as we're leaving the gas station, we are coming up on the intersection with a stop sign, and we need to turn left on to get to my place. I was in the passenger side playing Pokemon Go when my friend said, "That person must be crazy to be out jogging." I look up to see that they are approaching the intersection, and someone is jogging across it. I laughed in agreement, but I was in awe and blurted out, "Wow, that dude is really fast and tall. And why is he running so weird?" I didn't think too much about it, but as we got closer, I realized that he was running hunched and leaning forward, with his arms outstretched behind, like that run they do in Naruto. His arms were long past the knee, with giant outstretched hands and long fingers. He was skinny. I mean, like sickly skinny. The closer we got, the more wrong everything looked and felt. His movements were just so weird, like twitchy, but also fluid for the speed at which he was going. There were street lights all along the intersection and roads, but it was so weird because it seemed unusually dark out. As we came to the stop sign under the street that he had just crossed and came to a stop right before the edge of where the light reached, about 15 yards away from that. That was when I looked at the dash clock, and it hit me all at once. It was the middle of winter at 1:30 a.m., cold as hell out, and someone was out jogging. I realized this guy wasn't a guy. This thing was standing with its back towards us, hunched forward with arms stretched behind with those long, outstretched claws. It was the most intimidating stance that I've ever seen. This thing was easily over 7 feet tall and completely black. Its head was shaped like a German shepherd's. At this point, we'd been sitting at the stop sign, staring at it, for maybe 10 seconds when it did the fastest 180 I've ever seen, and was coming straight at us. I've never felt before that kind of panic, and it just crashed into me, that pure terror. It felt so heavy, and my whole being was screaming, "Danger! You're in danger!" So I yelled at her, "Go, go, go!" The car screeched as we took off, and my phone flew out of my hand. I looked behind us and sank deeper into a state of terror. This thing was not just keeping up, it was actually gaining on us. I yelled, "Floor it, it's right behind us." At 60 miles per hour, we started to lose it. I scrambled for my phone to call 911. The car came to a stop, and I immediately turned to my friend. She was just staring forward, wide-eyed. She kept saying, "I need to see it. I need to see it." I was so panicked, I instinctively turned her towards me and said, "You're not crazy. I saw it too. You're not crazy. It's real. We need to go before it gets us." She snapped out of it and floored it. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 and stopped. It was like I was finally able to get a grip on myself, almost like it was the result of the distance between us and the thing. My friend yelled, "What are you doing? Call the cops." And my response was, "They'll never believe us." I used to listen to a podcast, and I remember the host's words about when people see things, sometimes he wishes they'd turn around and verify what they saw. So I tell her, "Don't pull up to my place. It could still be behind us. Floor it to the end of the road. We're going to switch as fast as we can. I'm going to drive and put my phone against the windshield to record, and you're going to use your phone to record also. Then we can have more proof for the police to back up what just happened." She panicked and said no over and over, but she gunned it and drove past my place. We got to the end of the road, switched, and I gunned it toward the direction of the thing. Nothing. This all happened in minutes, and the speed it was going, and that we were going, well, we should have met. We started to approach where we had first seen it, and I don't know how to explain it, but I started to feel that fear all over again. I realized when we lost it, it must have turned around and gone back in the other direction, further down the road. The speed limit is 25, and I slowed down to 15 when that fear started weighing me down. Then I couldn't believe what happened. It was like a movie. A big group of deer came running from the direction that we were headed. They were literally running in the middle of the road and next to the car, bumping into each other. There had to be over 10 of them, buck and doe, in the middle of the road running toward the car. It was far less dangerous than what they were running from. I had never seen deer run that fast or so tightly together in that number. I had come to a complete stop to wait for them to get by before I continued driving. My friend commented, "It must be in that direction. Something must have terrified them to run towards us like that. It's got to be that thing we saw." I was thinking the same thing, and I started to feel that fear again. I continued down the stretch of road. Still nothing. We couldn't find it. I drove till 6 a.m., too scared to go home without proof to give the police to go look for it. I had convinced myself that I'd be safe if I knew the police were driving around the area, scared that it might follow me home if it were still light out. Since that night, I can be in my living room, playing a game and feel that same primal fear and panic wash over me. It wasn't every day, just a few times a week. It must be close, and that's why I'm still feeling this state of terror. I've had it where I'm gaming, just laughing with friends, and that terror crashes into me, like that thing is close and is watching me. I know I'm not in a constant state of paranoia, and that's why I feel the fear. I'll be having a good night, and then, completely out of the blue, boom, I get this fear. The terror is starting to be more frequent and intense. I'm a smoker, so at night I smoke and everything will be fine. I feel safe. Other times I feel watched and unsafe. Like my body is screaming at me that you're in danger. The thing I saw on the road that night was black. The thing I've seen after it is like white with almost glowing white eyes and sharp exposed teeth, but the same tall, thin body and that German shepherd-shaped head. I know this all sounds crazy, but what do you think it was? Signed, Nicole. Number 4. Hello, biker. This event happened in mid-July of 2015. I lived in Montana, outside of a rural community with a population of about 2,000. During this time, I lived in a small, one-floor ranch home by myself. My nearest neighbor lived 1 mile away and was a farmer. I never had many strange encounters leading up to this one, but the woods by my house had always had this ominous feel to them. Soon after moving in, I realized why the previous homeowners left pretty quickly. I'd start to hear noises out in the woods. These weren't just any noises, but what sounded like blood-curdling screams and growls. After doing some research, I learned that even something like a raccoon or a bobcat can make these unnatural noises, and, well, I just chalked it up to that. But still, there's something about it that just never felt right. It's hard to explain, but I never felt like this before, and it was just something about the woods around my house that made me very uncomfortable, like I was always being watched. The first experience I couldn't explain happened about 2 weeks after I moved in. There was a thunderstorm, and the thunder was loud enough to keep me awake. I never did feel comfortable in storms by myself, and the lightning was crazy and would light up the whole surrounding area for a fraction of a second. I was lying on the couch and got up to get a glass to drink at the sink. It was about 2 a.m., if I recall correctly. Above it, there's a small window that gives a good view of my yard, leading up to the tree line. When the next flash of lightning hit, I saw it. Now, admittedly, it wasn't a long view, but it gave me enough time to see whatever this thing was. It was near the tree line, just a few steps into my yard. At first glance, I thought it was a bear, but it wasn't. It was standing on 2 legs with its face pointed towards the house. Its legs were like a dog's, and I could clearly make out the hocks. It was hard to tell the color of the fur, but it was dark. The upper body was massive and had a wide torso, and arms that could almost reach the ground from a standing position. The strangest thing is how the upper body seemed to dwarf the lower body. After standing there, frozen in shock, I waited for the next lightning strike, but when it happened, it wasn't there. It all happened so quickly and was gone so quickly. After that, I bought a gun, and I would sleep with it within arm's reach. The next encounter is what I consider the most frightening thing of my life. For several weeks, nothing worth noting happened. I don't get cable where I live, and one night, I was watching something and my satellite kept acting up. I didn't feel like going outside at night, but this would be quick. I just had to move the antenna a little bit. Nothing had happened for a few weeks, so I decided to just go out and do it. I grabbed my gun and flashlight and went out. The first thing I noticed was this eerie quietness that surrounded me. Now, this time of year at night, the woods were active with all types of creatures, but not tonight. Despite the fear that I was developing, I made my way over to the satellite and began to adjust it. I heard the small snap of a stick and quickly turned to my left, shining the light toward the direction of the noise. And what I saw will horrify me for the rest of my life. It was immediately met with red eyes. These eyes were the color of blood, and they were evil. The head of this thing looked like a mutated dog. I don't want to say it, but it looked like a werewolf. A long snout and pointy ears. The fur was black and shaggy in some places. I could see this creature's extremely developed musculature, and it dwarfed even the biggest humans on Earth. It was half in and half out of the woods, almost crouching, and it still came up to my head at 6 feet. Fully standing, this thing would have had to have been at least 8 feet. I was about 20 feet away, and I didn't even consider my gun, which I had brought to protect me. Chances are, in hindsight, that little .223 bullets would have just pissed this thing off before it tore me to shreds. I backed away slowly, never breaking eye contact with it. I gently picked up my gun, and my fight-or-flight reflexes kicked in. I chose flight. Maybe not the best option, but even if I stayed there, this thing would have killed me. I ran the fastest that I've ever run in my life and didn't turn back. Not even once. I have no idea if it was chasing me. I got into the house, locked every door and window, covered the blinds, and sat with my back against the wall, cradling the gun the entire night. I didn't get a wink of sleep that evening, and very few in the following days. To make a long story short, I don't live there anymore. People often talk of Sasquatch being harmonious with nature and living within the ecosystem. Sure, if you see one, it might be scary, but it's probably more awe than anything. With this thing, it was totally different. It felt unnatural, it felt sinister, and it felt evil. It was stalking me and toying with me, and I believed that it would have eventually killed me. I've never seen nor experienced this feeling again in my life. It's a memory that I try to put past me, but I still get nightmares about it. I think until the day I die, I'll always have the image burned into my memory. The best image I've seen that fits the description of this creature is the werewolf from the movie The Howling. I will answer any questions you have. Signed, Randy.
Quick narrator's note here. I emailed Randy back. One, because his eyewitness report was so close, and he invited me to do so in his original email. I asked for any more detail at all he could give me, and, well, he responded. And what he said was quite chilling. He continues.
You know, Biker, the isolation of that place was definitely the worst part. It's just you and this creature out there, and if it decides that it doesn't want you around anymore, you'll just disappear. Then your death will be ruled as either an attack from bears or wolves. Looking back, there were a lot of wildlife-related deaths in my general area. I wonder if it's just a coincidence. My neighbor, who was a chicken farmer, he ended up dying. I tried getting a hold of him and finding things out, but his family was extremely secretive. The address was 61720, Highway 43, Wise River, Montana, 59762. In my mind, there is no way this was a bear. I was so close to it that I could see every feature. It had an obvious canine appearance on the face and also had hocks, like the legs of a dog. Misidentification is always a thing, but I don't believe this was anything like a bear. Maybe the whole sinister and evil thing is an exaggeration created by my fear. If it wanted to hurt me, it would have just done it. It's just how I justify coming face to face with something so terrifying, I think. It looked like a predator that could rip me apart. It's just that it wasn't scared of me. Unlike other stories I've read, this thing didn't run off or back down. It was just silently watching me. It didn't growl at me either. It was just dead silent. And yes, I saw it very close. So close that I could even smell it. It smelled like, well, a wet dog that rolled in something nasty. very strong and pungent. When the light shined on its face, its eyes had that same reflection that a cat's would. And that's really all I can remember. If I recall anything else, I'll let you know. Signed, Randy. And there it is. All the bone-chilling encounters and sightings with upright cryptid canines that I have for tonight. What an incredible and eerie ride it's been, exploring these encounters with you. If you have any encounters or stories that you'd like to share, don't hesitate to reach out to me at the email in the description. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe and ring the notification bell if you haven't already. So thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker, out.